Part 1. The Man Who Had Everything But Felt Empty. Your greatest prison is not the world around you. It is the world inside your mind. On a cold morning, before the sun had climbed above the mountains, a young man named Daniel stood alone on a cliff overlooking the sea. To anyone watching, Daniel seemed successful. He had a good job, a nice apartment, expensive clothes, and thousands of followers online. People admired him. Friends praised him. His family believed he had achieved everything they had hoped for. But deep inside, Daniel felt empty. Every morning he woke with anxiety. Every night he went to bed wondering why happiness always seemed one step ahead of him. One mistake ruined his entire day. One insult stayed in his mind for weeks. One failure convinced him he was not good enough. He spent hours comparing himself to others. He chased approval from strangers. He feared rejection. He feared failure. Most of all, he feared becoming ordinary. One evening, after another stressful day, he wandered into an old bookstore hidden between two narrow streets. Dust covered the shelves. The room smelled of old paper and history. An elderly man sat quietly reading. Without looking up, the old man said, "You're searching for something you cannot buy." Daniel froze. "How did you know?" The old man smiled. "Because everyone who enters this place is searching for peace." Daniel laughed nervously. "I have money. I have success. But I don't have peace." The old man closed his book. "Then you are richer than many, yet poorer than yourself." Those words struck Daniel like lightning. The old man reached to a shelf and placed an ancient book in Daniel's hands. Its title read, "The Stoicism Power." "Read this," the old man whispered. "It will not change the world around you. It will change the world within you." Daniel took the book home. That night he opened the first page. The first sentence changed everything. "You cannot control what happens to you. You can always control how you respond." He stared at the words. He realized he had spent his entire life trying to control people. Control opinions. Control outcomes. Control luck. Control the future. But he had never learned to control himself. For the first time, he understood the truth. Real power isn't money. Real power isn't fame. Real power isn't influence. Real power is mastering your own mind. The next morning, Daniel made a promise. For 30 days he would live like a Stoic. No excuses. No complaints. No blaming others. Every challenge would become a lesson. Every setback would become training. Every fear would become an opportunity. He had no idea that this decision would completely transform his life. Because unlocking your true potential doesn't begin when life becomes easy. It begins the moment you stop allowing your emotions to control your destiny. That was the first lesson. And it would only become more difficult from there. To be continued in Part 2. The Stoicism Power, Unlock Your True Potential. Part 2, The First Battle Begins. The next morning, Daniel woke before sunrise. For the first time in years, he didn't reach for his phone. Normally, the first thing he did every morning was scroll through social media. He compared his life to people he had never met. Every expensive car, luxurious vacation, and smiling photo made him feel as though he was falling behind. But today was different. He remembered the first lesson from the Stoic book. The person who compares himself to others will never know peace. Daniel placed his phone inside a drawer. He walked to the window and watched the rising sun. The city was still asleep. The silence felt strange. For years his mind had been filled with noise, notifications, opinions, arguments, and endless distractions. Now, for the first time, he heard something different. His own thoughts. At first, they were not kind. "You're not good enough. You'll never become successful enough. People are ahead of you. You're wasting your time." Daniel almost gave up. Then he remembered another sentence from the book. "Your mind becomes what you feed it." He realized something powerful. The greatest enemy he had ever faced wasn't another person. It wasn't failure. It wasn't bad luck. It was the voice inside his own head. That day at work, everything seemed to test him. His manager criticized a report he had spent hours preparing. His first instinct was anger. His heart raced. His hands tightened. He wanted to defend himself. Instead, he paused. He took one deep breath. He remembered the Stoic teaching. Between what happens and how you respond lies your greatest power. Instead of arguing, Daniel calmly asked, "What can I improve?" His manager looked surprised. There was no argument. No shouting. Only a calm conversation. For the first time, Daniel realized something incredible. Peace is stronger than pride. That evening he returned to the old bookstore. The elderly man was waiting, as if he had known Daniel would return. "So," the old man asked, "how was your first battle?" "I thought Stoicism would make life easier," Daniel admitted. The old man smiled. "It doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger." Then he placed a small stone into Daniel's hand. "Carry this everywhere." Daniel looked confused. "What does it mean?" The old man replied. "Every time life makes you angry, squeeze the stone before speaking. Let it remind you that strength is not reacting. Strength is choosing." Daniel slipped the stone into his pocket. Over the next few days, it became his silent teacher. Someone insulted him. He touched the stone. Someone cut in front of him in traffic. He touched the stone. A business opportunity failed. He touched the stone. Little by little, something remarkable happened. His emotions no longer controlled him. He was beginning to control them. One Saturday morning, Daniel visited a nearby park. An old gardener was trimming roses. Daniel noticed something unusual. The gardener carefully cut away healthy-looking branches. "Why are you cutting them?" Daniel asked. "They look beautiful." The gardener smiled. "They look beautiful today. But if I don't remove what is unnecessary, the plant will never become extraordinary." Daniel stood silently. The gardener continued. "Growth always requires sacrifice." Those words echoed in Daniel's mind. That night he went home and looked at his own life. How many things were stealing his potential? Hours wasted scrolling online. Friends who constantly complained. Negative thinking. Fear of failure. Fear of criticism. The need for everyone's approval. He finally understood. His future wasn't waiting to be found. It was waiting to be built. Over the next week, Daniel made difficult decisions. He limited social media. He began reading every morning. He exercised instead of making excuses. He wrote down 3 things he was grateful for each night. He stopped arguing over things that didn't matter. At first, the changes felt small. But day after day, they became habits. And habits became character. One evening, while walking home, Daniel noticed a homeless man sitting quietly beside the road. Despite having almost nothing, the man was smiling. Daniel sat beside him. "How can you smile when life is so difficult?" he asked. The man looked at the sunset before answering. "I lost my money years ago. I lost my home. I even lost people I loved. But I refused to lose myself." Daniel felt chills. The homeless man continued. "Life can take everything you own. But it cannot take your character unless you give it away." Daniel walked home with tears in his eyes. He finally understood what true wealth meant. It wasn't found in a bank account. It wasn't measured by fame or possessions. It was measured by discipline, courage, wisdom, and peace. That night, Daniel opened the Stoic book once again. The next chapter began with a sentence that stopped him in his tracks. "The hardest battle is still ahead. Before you can conquer the world, you must conquer your fears." Daniel closed the book slowly. He looked into the mirror. For the first time, he wasn't afraid of what he saw. He knew the real journey had only just begun. End of Part 2. The Stoicism Power, Unlock Your True Potential. Part 3. The Fire That Reveals Your True Strength. A calm mind is not born in comfort. It is forged in adversity. 3 weeks had passed since Daniel began living according to Stoic principles. The changes were real. He was calmer, more disciplined, and no longer reacted to every inconvenience. But life has a way of testing every lesson. One Monday morning, Daniel arrived at work expecting an ordinary day. Instead, he was called into the manager's office. The room was silent. His manager looked down before speaking. "Daniel, the company is reducing staff. Today is your last day." For a moment, time seemed to stop. His heart pounded. Questions rushed through his mind. How will I pay my bills? What will my family think? What if I never find another job? He wanted to panic. He wanted to argue. He wanted to blame someone. Then another voice rose inside him, the voice he had been training for weeks. You cannot control what happens. You can control how you respond. Daniel took a slow breath. He thanked his manager for the opportunity he had been given. He shook his hand. He walked out with dignity. As he stepped onto the busy street, fear whispered, "Your life is over." But wisdom whispered louder, "No, your next chapter has just begun." The return to the bookstore. Instead of going home in despair, Daniel walked to the old bookstore. The elderly man looked up from his chair and smiled. "I've been expecting you." Daniel sighed. "I lost everything." The old man gently corrected him. "No. You lost a job. There is a difference." Daniel sat in silence. The old man poured 2 cups of tea. "Tell me," he asked, "before today, who were you?" Daniel answered, "I was a marketing manager." The old man shook his head. "No. That was your profession. Who were you?" Daniel hesitated. I don't know." The old man smiled kindly. "Exactly. Most people confuse their identity with their circumstances. When life changes, they believe they have lost themselves. But a Stoic knows that titles can disappear. Money can disappear. Success can disappear. Only character remains." Daniel looked at the old man with new understanding. For years he had built his identity on things that could be taken away. Now he realized his greatest investment should have been his character. A difficult decision. That evening Daniel walked home carrying only a small box containing his office belongings. As he entered his apartment, he noticed a framed quote on the wall. "Discipline is choosing what you want most over what you want now." He smiled. Instead of spending the night complaining, he opened a notebook. Across the top he wrote, "What is still under my control?" He began making a list. Heavy checkmark my attitude. Heavy checkmark my effort. Heavy checkmark my discipline. Heavy checkmark my health. Heavy checkmark my learning. Heavy checkmark my honesty. Heavy checkmark my courage. The list became longer and longer. By the time he finished, he realized something powerful. He had lost one opportunity. He had not lost his future. The mountain challenge. A week later, the old man invited Daniel on a journey. "We're climbing the mountain." Daniel looked surprised. "What for?" The old man simply smiled. "You'll understand." Before sunrise they began walking. The path was steep. The air was cold. Every step became harder than the last. After several hours Daniel collapsed onto a large rock. "I can't continue." The old man didn't argue. He simply asked, "Who told you that?" Daniel looked confused. "My body." The old man shook his head. "No. Your mind. Your body can do far more than your mind believes." Daniel slowly stood. One more step. Then another. Then another. Hours later they finally reached the summit. The view was breathtaking. Mountains stretched beyond the horizon. The sky glowed with golden light. The old man looked toward the sunrise. "Tell me, what was harder? The mountain? Or convincing yourself to keep climbing?" Daniel smiled. "My mind." The old man nodded. "Exactly. The greatest mountain any person will ever climb is the one inside." The storm. As they began their descent, dark clouds gathered. Rain poured from the sky. Lightning flashed across the mountains. The narrow trail became slippery. Daniel became afraid. What if we don't make it? The old man remained calm. Focus on the next step. Not the whole mountain. Daniel obeyed. One careful step. Then another. Then another. After hours of walking, they finally reached safety. That night Daniel understood another Stoic truth. You don't survive storms by worrying about the entire journey. You survive by taking the next right step. The same is true in life. The unexpected opportunity. Several days later Daniel met an old friend named Michael. Michael had started a small business but was struggling. I need someone disciplined. I don't need someone perfect. I need someone who doesn't quit. Daniel smiled. Only weeks earlier he would have doubted himself. Now he accepted the challenge. He worked harder than ever before. He arrived early. He studied late. He treated every mistake as a lesson instead of a failure. Months passed. The business began to grow. Customers trusted Daniel because he remained calm under pressure. Employees respected him because he listened before speaking. Success slowly returned, not because he chased it, but because he had become the kind of person success could trust. The mirror. One evening Daniel stood before a mirror. He barely recognized the man staring back. Not because his appearance had changed. Because his spirit had changed. Months earlier he had needed applause to feel valuable. Now he needed only a clear conscience. Months earlier he feared criticism. Now he welcomed correction because it made him stronger. Months earlier he wanted life to become easier. Now he wanted himself to become wiser. He finally understood the secret hidden inside the Stoic book. True potential is never unlocked by comfort. It is unlocked by discipline, by patience, by courage, by choosing wisdom over emotion every single day. That night he opened the book once more. The next chapter contained only one sentence. The strongest person is not the one who defeats others, but the one who conquers himself. Daniel closed the book and smiled. He knew his greatest battle was still ahead. But for the first time in his life, he was ready. End of Part 3. The story continues in Part 4, The Discipline That Creates an Unbreakable Mind, where Daniel faces temptation, betrayal, and his greatest test of character. The Stoicism Power, Unlock Your True Potential. Part 4, The Discipline That Creates an Unbreakable Mind. A person who cannot master himself will always become a servant to his emotions. Months passed. Daniel's life looked better than ever. The small business he had joined was growing quickly. His confidence had returned. He woke before sunrise every morning, exercised, read Stoic philosophy, and ended each day by writing in his journal. People began asking him the same question. What's your secret? Daniel would smile and answer. There is no secret. I simply stopped fighting the world and started training my mind. But life wasn't finished testing him. The greatest lessons always arrive after success. The temptation. One afternoon, Michael called Daniel into his office. I have exciting news, he said. A wealthy investor wants to partner with us. Daniel smiled. This could change everything. The investor arrived wearing an expensive suit and carrying an air of confidence. He praised their business. He praised Daniel's work. Then he made an offer. I'll invest millions. There is only one condition. Daniel listened carefully. I want you to exaggerate the results of your business. Tell clients what they want to hear. No one will notice. The room became silent. Michael looked tempted. This could make us rich. Daniel remembered another Stoic lesson. If you must choose between wealth and character, choose character every time. He stood up calmly. I refuse. The investor laughed. You would reject millions? Daniel nodded. I would rather lose money than lose myself. The investor left without another word. Michael was angry. You just destroyed our biggest opportunity. Daniel replied quietly. If success demands dishonesty, it isn't success. The price of integrity. For weeks, business became difficult. Several clients left. Money became tight. Employees worried. Some blamed Daniel. You made the wrong decision. You should have accepted the deal. You've ruined everything. Their words hurt. But Daniel remembered the mountain. He remembered the storm. He remembered the stone in his pocket. He squeezed it gently. Instead of arguing, he returned to work. Day after day. Quietly. Patiently. Without complaining. Because Stoicism had taught him one truth. Discipline means doing what is right even when no one applauds you. The visit to the blacksmith. One evening, Daniel visited a small village outside the city. There he met an old blacksmith. The man was striking a glowing piece of steel with a heavy hammer. Again. And again. And again. Sparks flew through the air. Daniel watched in silence. Why do you hit it so many times? He asked. The blacksmith smiled. Because weak metal becomes strong only after enduring fire. Daniel stared at the glowing steel. The blacksmith continued. People are exactly the same. Comfort creates softness. Difficulty creates strength. The fire you're trying to escape is the fire that can transform you. Those words stayed with Daniel for days. He finally understood why life had been so difficult. Every disappointment. Every failure. Every rejection. Every obstacle. Had been shaping him into someone stronger. The betrayal. A month later, something unexpected happened. Daniel discovered that one of the employees had secretly copied company information and started a competing business. The betrayal shocked everyone. Michael exploded with anger. We're going to destroy him. We'll make him regret this. Everyone expected Daniel to agree. Instead, he remained silent. Later that evening, he visited the old bookstore. The elderly mentor listened patiently. Then he asked, Tell me, Daniel, who suffers more? The person carrying hatred, or the person who caused the pain? Daniel thought carefully. The person carrying hatred. The old man nodded. Exactly. When you hold on to anger, you continue punishing yourself. Forgiveness doesn't excuse betrayal. It frees your own mind. The next day Daniel made an unexpected decision. He refused revenge. Instead, he focused on improving the company. Some people called him weak. But deep inside, Daniel knew the truth. Revenge satisfies the ego. Wisdom protects the soul. The night of reflection. That evening Daniel climbed the same mountain he had climbed months before. This time he came alone. He reached the summit just before sunset. The wind blew softly across the rocks. He sat quietly. No phone. No music. No distractions. Only silence. He thought about the man he used to be. A man controlled by fear. A man desperate for approval. A man who believed success could fill an empty heart. Then he looked at the man he had become. Someone who valued peace over praise. Discipline over comfort. Wisdom over pride. Character over wealth. He smiled. For the first time in his life, he felt truly free. Not because life had become perfect, but because his mind no longer depended on perfect circumstances. The final lesson before dawn. When Daniel returned home, he opened the Stoic book once again. Inside was a handwritten note he had never noticed before. It read, One final test remains. The world will offer you power. The question is whether you will remain humble enough to deserve it. Daniel closed the book slowly. He looked out of the window. The stars filled the night sky. He knew another challenge was coming. But he no longer feared it. Because true Stoicism had become more than something he read. It had become the way he lived. He whispered to himself, No matter what tomorrow brings, I will meet it with courage, discipline, and wisdom. As the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, Daniel smiled. The greatest chapter of his life was about to begin. End of Part 4. The story continues in Part 5, The Final Test, Becoming the Master of Your Mind, where Daniel faces the ultimate challenge that proves whether he has truly unlocked his full potential. The Stoicism Power, Unlock Your True Potential. Part 5, The Final Test, becoming the master of your mind. The greatest victory is not over another person. It is over the person you used to be. Months turned into years. Daniel's life had changed in ways he could never have imagined. The small business had grown into a respected company. People admired his calm leadership, his honesty, and his ability to remain steady in difficult times. But Daniel knew something others did not. His greatest achievement wasn't the business. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the respect. His greatest achievement was the peace he carried within himself. Yet one final test remained. The unexpected invitation. One afternoon, Daniel received an elegant letter. It invited him to speak at the National Leadership Summit, where thousands of entrepreneurs, students, and business owners would gather. At first, he smiled. Then fear returned. What if I fail? What if I forget my words? What if everyone laughs at me? For a brief moment, the old Daniel returned. The same fear. The same self-doubt. The same anxiety. He closed his eyes. Then he remembered his mentor's words. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite fear. He accepted the invitation. The last visit to the bookstore. Before the conference, Daniel returned to the old bookstore. The door was slightly open. Inside, everything was quiet. The shelves were covered with dust. The old man's chair stood empty. Daniel searched every corner. There was no one. Only one small package rested on the table. It had his name written on it. With trembling hands, he opened it. Inside was the small stone the old man had once given him. Beside it was a handwritten letter. It read, Daniel, if you are reading this, my work is finished. Never believe that I changed your life. You changed it the day you decided to govern your own mind. The stone never contained power. The power was always inside you. Now it is your turn to teach others. Daniel felt tears fill his eyes. He looked around the bookstore one last time. The man who had guided him had disappeared, but his wisdom remained. The speech. The conference hall was filled with thousands of people. Bright lights illuminated the stage. As Daniel walked toward the microphone, the audience applauded. His heart beat faster. He reached into his pocket. The stone was there. He smiled. Not because the stone was magical, but because it reminded him of who he had become. He began speaking. I used to believe success meant having more than everyone else. I was wrong. I chased approval. I feared failure. I blamed the world for my problems. But one day I discovered something. The strongest prison has no walls. It exists inside an undisciplined mind. The audience listened in complete silence. Daniel continued. I lost a job. I lost opportunities. I was criticized. I was betrayed. I faced fear. But every obstacle became my teacher. Every hardship became my training. And every setback became another step toward becoming the person I was meant to be. People began taking notes. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Others nodded quietly. Then Daniel asked one final question. What would happen if you stopped waiting for life to become easier and started becoming stronger instead? The room fell silent. That silence spoke louder than applause. A young stranger. After the event ended, hundreds of people gathered around Daniel. Among them stood a young man. He looked nervous. He held an old notebook. Sir, he said quietly, I feel completely lost. I don't know my purpose. I don't believe in myself anymore. Daniel smiled gently. Years ago, those same words had belonged to him. He reached into his pocket. He placed the smooth stone into the young man's hand. The young man looked confused. What is this for? Daniel smiled. It isn't magic. It simply reminds you to pause before reacting. It reminds you that your greatest power is choosing your response. The young man held the stone tightly. Hope returned to his eyes. At that moment, Daniel realized the true purpose of wisdom. It is not meant to be kept. It is meant to be shared. The journey continues. Years passed. Daniel became known not for his wealth, but for his character. People sought his advice. Leaders respected his wisdom. Young people found hope in his words. But every morning, he still followed the same simple routine. He woke before sunrise. He spent a few moments in silence. He exercised his body. He trained his mind. He wrote in his journal. He reminded himself that every new day was another opportunity to become a better person than he had been yesterday. He never claimed to be perfect. He simply refused to stop growing. The final lesson. One evening, as the sun disappeared below the horizon, Daniel climbed the mountain one last time. He stood at the summit where his greatest lessons had begun. The wind blew gently across the rocks. He looked toward the endless horizon. He whispered to himself, "Life gave me storms, so I learned courage. Life gave me failure, so I learned resilience. Life gave me criticism, so I learned humility. Life gave me pain, so I discovered my strength." Then he smiled. He finally understood what the old mentor had been trying to teach him from the very beginning. Your true potential is never hidden inside your circumstances. It is hidden inside your choices. Every disciplined decision, every act of courage, every moment of patience, every time you choose wisdom over anger, every time you choose gratitude over complaint, every time you choose action over excuses. That is how true potential is unlocked. As the first stars appeared in the night sky, Daniel turned and walked down the mountain, not as the man who had once searched for answers, but as the man who had become the answer. Final message to the audience. If this story inspired you, remember this. You cannot always control what happens to you, but you can always control who you become because of it. Your greatest enemy is not failure. It is fear. Your greatest obstacle is not the world. It is the limits you place on your own mind. Unlock your true potential by mastering yourself, one decision, one habit, and one day at a time. The end.